we're taking a swing at fraud, waste, and abuse. This is the IssuesWatch podcast. Hi, I'm Don Meyer, Chief Marketing Officer at the New Jersey Society of CPAs, and welcome to the IssuesWatch podcast. Fraud, waste, and abuse. Those three words go together like tic-tac-toe, and they're just as unappealing. We've been hearing a lot about fraud, waste, and abuse lately, but do the general public, and even some accountants, truly understand what that means? Are there hard and fast definitions, or is it in the eye of the beholder? Here with me to answer these burning questions are two NJCPA members we affectionately call the Megans. Megan Kelly is a director at FAZ Forensics, and Megan Sartor is a partner at SAX LLP. Welcome, Megans.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
That went as smoothly as I thought it would.
Yes.
All right, so before we get into the subject of our podcast, because our viewers may be wondering why we call you the Megans, we learned about your friendship when Megan was on the podcast. By the way, she's one up on you now. When Megan was on the podcast about a year ago, we learned about this unorthodox friendship. So I understand that once upon a time, you were softball rivals.
Yes. Of course, we answered that in unison. Once upon a time, we both played in the Sussex County Interscholastic League softball.
The SCIL.
Rest in peace.
Like I didn't know that.
Which RIP is no
Rest in
longer
peace to
no
the
longer a
SCIL.
thing.
Yeah.
So
Megan and I grew up on opposite sides of Lake Apacon. I grew up on the better side.
It's like the Sharks and the Jets type of thing.
Yeah, basically.
yeah, the Jefferson Falcons,
Yeah.
the Lenape Valley Patriots.
Go Falcons.
Go Patriots.
So not only did we play for, I'll say rival high schools, but Megan hates when I say this. What's a rivalry if one team never wins?
But then we talk about positions as catchers, which we'll get
Correct.
into.
You quickly changed the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
And she was a fantastic catcher. Just outstanding at her position. Not only was she great at her position, she's a great hitter. And I was good.
I'm sweating with all these compliments because I don't.
I know,
what
she
to say.
hates it.
I hate it. I
Waiting
hate
for
it.
the shoe to drop. Yeah.
No, but Megan was also amazing as a catcher, which she will go through, and she's brought snippets to.
Okay.
I mean, yes. Do I have newspaper clippings on my phone? Yes.
Do you
I
send them to me randomly?
Yeah, yes,
Yes,
I do.
you do. I will say my most memorable high school softball memory, right, for me is a negative, and it is her positive softball memory. So I feel like she should be able to tell that.
It has to be April because it's cold.
Mm-hmm.
It's very cold out. It was gray. It was a horrible day. We were playing Megan's team.
At
This
home
was
at
yeah.
your field.
This was 2005. We were juniors, and the game. It's pretty back and forth. I believe we were winning at this point, but it was pretty tight. I know I had an RBI at this point, so good job,
Kudos
Megan.
to you. Yep. Yep.
Megan steps into the box and she is mad. And frankly, she looks mad all the time on the softball field.
I think in general. I
intense.
feel like many people would say in
Intensity.
general.
Yeah,
I
she's
look
very
mad.
intense.
Right. But not mad at you.
No, she didn't give two thoughts to me because I was not relevant to her life.
But she clearly makes up for it now.
Yeah.
Megan smokes a ball to right center field. We had woods in the back. We did not have a fence. There were woods. And I see the ball is rolling to the woods. And I was like, oh no, here we go. So I'm yelling, because as the catcher, you are controlling what goes on in the field.
Yeah.
So I'm screaming, cut three, because I knew immediately with her speed, it's gonna be a triple easy. All of a sudden, Megan is approaching third base and she is not stopping.
Nope.
And her coach has the brakes on.
Yep.
Stop, do not pass go, stop.
Yep.
Megan blows through her coach's stop sign,
I did.
which was initially a good move because the cutoff throw was bad. However, I, in a moment of athleticism on my part, I tracked the ball down. My pitcher, luckily, phenomenal athlete, shout out to Brittany Gerritsen, covered home plate. So I ran, grabbed the ball, backflipped.
Like a Jeter-esque move.
Yes.
Yes.
In catcher's
Exactly.
gear, very athletic. Yep.
What year was this?
2005.
Oh, so it was a few years
This
after
is the
Jeter.
this is
Yeah,
the
okay.
20-year anniversary of this moment.
Oh my God, it is. Oh my God, this month.
Yeah.
Did you plan this?
Yes.
Right.
Dawn and I planned this.
This is your life. But not in a good way.
No, not in a good way.
Megan was tagged out at home plate, and she
Yep.
had that incredible hit for nothing.
For nothing. And I think that's in your newspaper clipping.
I
that
do
you sent
have
me,
the newspaper clipping on my phone right now.
that she sends to me.
Yeah.
Yep. So her best moment, one of her best
Let me
moments.
see if I missed anything.
And then is my worst, is I look back and I'm like, if you asked me today, would I have stopped? Looking back,
Right.
no way. Never
Oh, we
would've
were wrong.
stopped.
It was left center field.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't hit to the right side of the bag. And
Well,
you know that.
I apologize.
Literally ever. And when I do, it's
Megan
really
Cicchetti smoked a Gerritsen offering to the gap in left center for a leadoff triple. When the relay throw to home plate was wild, Cicchetti tried to score, but Kelly, that's me, recovered quickly and flipped the ball to Gerritsen for the out.
Yep.
Sorry,
And my
Megan.
dad reminds me about that as well. So here we are.
But so as adults, Megan and I reconnected through softball.
Yep.
Not through the work that we both do essentially the same job,
Essentially
Right.
the
which
same
is
job.
interesting to me that we went from same position,
Same position in high school.
same
softball.
name. Now we do the same job. But
Yep.
if you think about it, and I say this a lot, I think it's not surprising to me that we as catchers are doing this job now, because for me, forensic accounting is all about pattern recognition.
Analytical.
Analytical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So when you're catching,
Developing a plan. What's happening next? Where do we go from here? Right.
Right.
and you have to
Commanding.
acknowledge differences, not just in every single play, but every single pitch. What did this person do their last at bat? What did they do their last swing? Did they move their feet in the box? What did they do the last game? You have to constantly be analyzing everything that's
Right.
happening in front of you.
Right.
And that has really helped me with work.
Same.
But we ended up playing on the same adult co-ed slow pitch softball team.
And I can remember I walked to the fields, right? I don't know these people, right? I met the guy who runs our team through my husband when they were working at UPS, and my, Steve was like, "Oh, to my husband, does your wife want to play?" And Chris was like, "Yes, of course she wants to play," right? So I go and I walk up and I see Megan, Lauren, Jefferson players that I recognize, and I'm like, okay, here we go. I'm like, this is great. And she
There she
says
was.
to me, like, I see her talking to Lauren.
I was
and I'm
very
like,
upfront with her right
correct,
away.
right away. She's like, I need to get this out of the way. I used to hate you. And I was like, okay, got it.
I wanted to get it out of the way. I wanted to say, I apologize. I'm an adult. I shouldn't have said those things if they ever got back to you. And let's move on.
And then
Let's move on. She didn't have to move on. It was me. I'm moving on. I'm sorry. I should not have been a bratty teenager.
But then from there, I was like, okay, cool. And I was like, let's get to know each other because we didn't really know each other. We knew of each other from
Right.
softball, and we're at softball. And then we came to find out, like, okay, we both are accountants. It's a little weird, but now we're both doing forensic accounting, business valuation in the same niche.
It's more
also-
common than just softball.
Yep, more weird. So
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now in slow pitch softball, nobody wants to be the catcher. So what positions did you
no,
play?
yep.
Well, Megan is, like I've said repeatedly, an actual athlete. So Megan plays the outfield
Okay.
I play-
because
Yeah.
she can track a ball down and catch it
Right.
in the air.
First base.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I mean that's
She's at
that's
I
first
you
think
know,
the
And
Joe-
that's the softball, slow pitch
It
softball
is.
equivalent of
It
catcher,
is, and
right?
she's
Yeah.
a spectacular first baseman. Like she says, I'm not athletic, this and that, but she's stretching and making plays that when she's not there, other people aren't making. So she's modest about that, but she's a great first baseman. There's no doubt.
I'm talking myself down with softball, but
She's a great softball
I'm
player.
sure we were both
I was a good
excellent
catcher.
softball
You were a good
So-
catcher, you're good now, and that's how we connected, and that's how we are here today, is that we do the same thing. We are very good friends, best friends. We text all the time,
Right.
talk all the time, and we still play softball together. So
Yeah,
the amount of
that's actually all we have
sunscreen
time
do.
for. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay,
Let's get
cut.
started. Obviously,
What's
fraud,
wrong
waste,
with
and abuse have been in the news a lot lately. Those words have been invoked to explain all manner of policy decisions, but I'm not sure that most people really know what they mean. So, Megan Kay, I'm going to start with you. Let's start at the end, because I think fraud is probably a little more obvious to people. Let's start with abuse. Now, to me, abuse means like a CEO who buys a gold-plated toilet for their private office or something like that. But you're the expert. You define abuse for me.
Yeah, I mean that's you're on the right track for sure. Abuse. If we're talking about the actual definition, if you're looking through the ACFE website or something like that, it's something along the lines of improper or excessive use of resources or services, and it doesn't rise to the level of fraud, which I know Megan's going to talk about, because it's not. It's allegedly not intentionally deceptive. It
So
doesn't
get you fired, but not put in
right.
jail.
It doesn't rise to the level of criminal intent, which I think could be argued maybe it does. But some examples of abuse would be like using a company vehicle for your personal related activities,
Right.
or doing personal activities on company time. It's taking advantage of a situation. That's how I would describe abuse. So it's not, like I said, it's not necessarily, there's no intent behind it. Like I'm gonna allegedly no intent. I think it really, they all gotta go hand in hand.
Okay.
But
That's why they're used a lot interchangeably, I
Yeah.
think. And I think it more often than not, violates some sort of policy. So
Right. So if abuse is not maybe technically illegal, could it turn illegal if perhaps there's some chicanery
Yes.
involved in covering up the abuse?
correct.
bingo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go from right to left. Let's start waste. Megan.
Waste.
Define waste for
Okay,
me.
so waste would be, careless or extravagant expenditures of resources that result in unnecessary costs or improper practices. So
Okay.
waste, I think of it more because I have 2 young children, right? So I'm using it in a child example, right? So I was talking with Megan about this the other day. I was like, I always think of things, try to explain it to a child. What is waste, right? So if you have a situation where there's like a candy jar in a school and it's supposed to be used for school projects, right? Waste could be that somebody takes a handful of the candy that's supposed to be used for a project and they either eat it, they throw it away, or they leave it out in the sun. And now something that was supposed to be used for other people is now gone. It's
Okay.
wasted, right? So
Gotcha. Okay.
it's careless, extravagant use of resources that results in improper practices, or now there's not unnecessary cost because now I have to buy more candy because
Right.
you wasted that candy. So now I have to buy more.
Right. And just so our viewers know, we're going to talk about how this all relates back to what happens at a corporate level or a government level, because that's kind of where we'll be hearing a lot about this recently in a little bit. But let's go to fraud. That one seems the most obvious to me, but define fraud
so
for me.
fraud is the intentional deception or misrepresentation for financial or personal gain. So whereas Megan was talking about before, it has the intent. Like you're actually lying. You're actually maliciously doing it. There's an intent behind it, knowing it's wrong and doing it anyway. My candy jar example is something like, you're supposed to use it for a school project. You lie and say you're going to, but you just take it,
Gotcha.
right? And
Right.
you know that you're not supposed to, and you know that you're lying intentionally. You're not doing it because you didn't know that it was, not supposed to be done, or you didn't understand the rules. You're doing it on purpose with the sole purpose to either gain something personally or financially.
Okay. So you mentioned a few minutes ago, these 3 words, fraud, waste, and abuse, are linked. Why?
It's all about the misuse or mismanagement of resources or funds that results in financial losses or, unnecessary undermining programs, undermining the intention of something. So an intention of a program or an organization. they're all linked. So it's all, call it a triangle of sorts, but they're linked together. There's overlapping, but it's all around the misuse and mismanagement of resources.
What I've always found interesting as a non-CPA is that I've heard those three words used before, say, the last 12 months. I've heard those three words used mostly in relation to audits, but saying an audit is not supposed to uncover fraud, waste, and abuse.
Correct.
So it's kind of interesting that now it's become such not buzzword, but buzzwords.
Buzzwords altogether.
Yeah, and typically waste and abuse, if they go unchecked, can lead to fraud because someone that has you may have an employee that is under duress or sees the opportunity to commit fraud by acknowledging or identifying, there's a hole here in these internal controls, and I can exploit this, and then that is where it leads to fraud.
Yeah, so waste and abuse is more, based on negligence or improper practices or policies, right? So like Megan's saying, if somebody sees waste and abuse is happening, and then they have either these pressures, opportunity, motive, what have you, they can turn those waste and abuse into fraud because they see the opportunity and what's happening and can turn it into something else.
Right. So my next question is one worse than the others? It sounds like fraud is definitely worse.
Typically, fraud's going to be worse because of the fact that you have malicious intent and you are knowingly doing it. Whereas waste and abuse could be negligence, could be that there's not enough controls in place, the proper policies in place, the proper personnel in place, right? Not with the intent of that happening. It just happened in the system. Fraud is taking it with intent. You did this on purpose. You used deception or lying or what have you, and knowingly did it.
Right. So Megan K. Is looking for, we're talking about fraud, waste, and abuse a lot in the federal government, is looking for it in the federal government, state government, wherever, local government. Is that, just roll with me, is that different than looking for it in a company or a nonprofit?
So I am going to say
simple answer first.
No.
Yep.
I'm going to say no.
Okay.
And there could be people listening or watching this that are going to say, yes, it's extremely different. But at the core of the question you are asking, to me, it's no. And that's because when you are investigating fraud, waste, or abuse, typically it's in response to something. Something has happened. And in my experience on jobs that I've done, it's either a fraud has already been uncovered by most of my work is for private businesses. Fraud's already been uncovered, and they ask us to come in and do kind of a control assessment and say, okay, we know this happened, but why did it happen? What did we do wrong? Where were there holes, and how do we fix it? Or we've done jobs where they think that something may be happening because expenses are higher than they previously were, but a lot of times small businesses don't have the resources to have proper segregation of duties. So a lot of times they just don't know what the issue is. And for me, it's the same thing, whether it's a private business, a nonprofit, or the government. You get brought in for the same reason. That's why I say that's not different. The differences are, you need to, on the government side, you need to have an understanding of governmental accounting. It's different than accounting for private businesses. The revenue source is different. For the government, it's taxpayer funds. For a private business, it's your revenue, it's capital investments, things like that. But, Megan and I were talking about this before we came in. When you're doing, regardless of if it's for the government, if it's for a business, nonprofit, et cetera, there are steps that you have to take. And these investigations typically take months.
Or years in some instances.
Yeah. You go in, you interview people. In my experience, I've interviewed the people that have committed the fraud and had them admit to what happened, what they did. Here, we're going to sign this thing saying we did it, and then it gets referred to law enforcement. Good. So, you conduct interviews, you review general ledgers, you look at other important documents, you get to understand the entity that you are investigating, assessing, etc. That takes a very long time. So, saying that you are I always say that words have meaning. So saying that you are rooting out fraud, waste, and abuse, that has meaning, and it has specific steps that are taken to do that. And that's, as forensic accountants, that's something that's very important to me, following steps, following procedures.
Correct.
It's not just, I don't like this, so I'm going to get rid of
Right.
it.
And a lot of times too, you will see something that stands out, like, oh, this number is really high, or this happened. But then when you actually go through the process and you understand the process and how things are operating, it may actually be right.
Right.
It just might be an anomaly, or it might be something happened or changed in the process that happened. But just because you see something that looks different doesn't mean that it's wrong.
Right.
And I think there's a disconnect there. But the biggest disconnect for me is that these investigations take a long time.
Right.
They're not
Yeah.
something that can happen.
Right. And that was
overnight.
actually my next question, and kind of follows up on what you were just saying. I mean, saying you're going to uncover fraud, waste, and abuse is a great talking point, because who's going to object to that?
Correct.
But I mean, it's really hard, right?
Yes. It's hard to prove. I mean, a lot of things, one thing, time consuming, right? It takes a long time to do these. You need the right personnel, the right expertise in place to do this. And in a lot of instances, right, we're coming in, or an investigator's coming in, and we don't know the processes, we don't know the systems, we don't know how this entity operates. You need a whistleblower, which we all know there's protections in place for whistleblowers, but they're still hard to come by. A lot of people don't want to do that.
Right, right.
So you need somebody that can give you this information that's on the inside, that understands it way better than we do, right?
Right.
I always say to people, no one understands your business better than you, right? I'm coming in from the outside, so I need people to walk me through it, to talk to me. If people aren't doing that, it makes it that much harder and much more time consuming. You also need access to records, databases, which we all know resistance comes when that happens,
Right.
right? From
can
a
also
legal
be manipulated.
standpoint. Correct. From a legal standpoint, they may not give it to you, right? There's going to be a lot of, motions to quash and all these things that are going to not let you get the records. And then, are those records accurate? Are they manipulated, right?
Right,
So
right.
it's difficult all those things come into play, which make it difficult to prove.
Right.
But it also doesn't happen overnight. It takes a long time.
And one thing that I like about the work that we do is that every investigation, whether it's an investigation, a control assessment, a business valuation, it's always something different. It's in a different industry. So I don't have an industry specialization. A lot of the valuation work I've done is in healthcare, but I don't know everything there is to know about every business on the planet. So when a company comes to us and says, we've been a victim of fraud, or we have a control weakness, I have to learn about how that business operates. I have to learn about what is special or different about their industry that may set them apart from what I know works in other industries. So that takes a lot of time, and you don't have someone who you can hire that knows everything about all businesses. That's just impossible.
And every business is different.
Yeah.
Right.
Every organization is different, and the way they handle things or process things is all different.
So you mentioned whistleblowers. We had Cynthia Cooper, who was the WorldCom whistleblower. She spoke at our convention, I don't know, probably 15 years ago. And one of the things that she said that struck me was that if a CEO, CFO, or somebody in the upper levels of management wants to commit fraud, it is almost impossible to uncover it, because they have access to everything. They can manipulate everything. I mean, would you agree with that?
I think they definitely have more access than anybody else. Absolutely.
Yeah, and if you look at the ACFE puts out a report to the nations, and the 3 kinds of occupational fraud, it's asset misappropriation, there's financial statement fraud, and there's corruption. I think corruption's the third one, right? Okay, we're gonna go
I don't
with
know.
corruption
Sure.
That's
as
the
the
next
third
that's the
one.
next
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah.
Yes,
Sure.
yeah.
So, but what I'm trying to get at is that financial statement fraud is always the one that has occurred the least amount of times in their survey, but it always has the largest dollar number of damages, because typically the financial statement fraud is committed by someone at the top of the organization
Yep.
that has more control over these
And that
things.
should know better. And
And it goes uncovered for a long time.
Right. And that comes back to, if you have the proper delegation and controls and all those things in place, that shouldn't be able to happen.
Right.
It shouldn't be able to happen that one person has the ability to do that and not have it be uncovered. But the problem is, you have smaller businesses or not enough resources or people getting laid off or things of that nature. So now you've eliminated a lot of people that could possibly stop it from happening.
Right.
They're not there anymore.
Yeah, and I feel like that's something that, when you, at least for me, when I see a lot of people getting let go from their jobs en masse, that raises red flags to me.
Well, because I was just going to say that. So when you're doing any of these investigations, the people that give you the most information are the people that work there. Like I said, no one knows people's businesses better than the people that work there. So if you want to understand processes or how things are done, you ask the people. But if the people are gone, you can't ask them. And now you're walking in blind and trying to figure it out and possibly making assumptions or some sort of bias about it because you don't have the people in there that actually lived it and can give you that insight.
Right. That's actually probably why it was so hard to prove anything in the wake of the Great Recession. All those companies, there was all those talk about, what did they do wrong and how did they fix, how did they kind of fix things, but they were all gone.
Gone.
They got laid off. I mean, Bear Stearns was gone, Lehman Brothers, and so forth.
Right.
So
how can you talk to people that are no longer there?
right,
Yeah,
exactly.
and every internal investigation that I do, we tell whoever brings us on, whether it's a CEO, whether it's a board, we need to interview your employees. And it always surprises me that sometimes whoever's hiring us is surprised by that, and they get a little taken aback, like, oh, people might be nervous, and it's okay. The interview session, I've done this for a long time, it's always more of a talking situation than, it's not like I'm shining a bright light on someone saying like, what's happening here, like that
That would be cool.
yeah. That's not what happens, but you find out so much. I've done in the past 3 months probably 2 of them, and every time I get into an interview, you ask a very pointed question because usually I know what's happened, and someone will say, I don't know if I should say anything, and I always say, you don't have to. If you don't want to say something, you don't have to. I'm not the police. But people love to talk, especially when they think something has gone wrong or if people are being mistreated. Mistreatment is another form of corporate abuse. So, and people don't like that.
Right.
So people love to talk about what they're experiencing, and that's the best way to, for me, the best way to know what's going on is to just talk to people.
Right. All right. We've had many firsts on this podcast, including the first time a guest has read from her phone during the podcast.
Yeah, I figured,
Yeah.
but I'm a trendsetter.
Right. But thank you both. This was awesome. I found your
Thank
story
you.
fascinating and the information just as fascinating. So thank you both.
Awesome.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thanks for listening and watching. For more information about fraud detection, visit njcpa.org/hub/fraud.